This is task 4D part 1. In this task you're asked to create a form that will be used to make reservations, and that form will have on it a check-in date, a check-out date, a visitor that can be selected from a list, and rooms that can be selected from a list. Now, looking at it, it could appear that it's quite hard to actually do this and that some of it's quite complicated. However, a lot of it's quite straightforward, and for part 1, where all you've got to do is create the form, it doesn't actually have to be working. And so we can do certain parts of it. We can make sure the check-in date and check-out date on there. We can make sure that the visitor can be selected from a list. Although we won't be able to cover available rooms, we can cover rooms being selected from a list, and in terms of printout, nothing will be known. We can cover the title and the logo. We don't need to look at the validation because that won't appear on a printout. And we can have a button that will be called Make Reservation, but it doesn't actually have to do anything. And this is what an example of that form would look like. And you're asked to show screenshot evidence of this form. So all we've got to do is create something that looks like that. Well, we've already created one form, which was this one, the room reservations. This one's all about making a new reservation. So we're going to create a new form, but this time, because it's not going to be based on any existing data, we're going to start straight off in form design view. We'll deal with the house style later on, but we will save our form now as make reservation, and I'm going to give my form a title. So we'll put our title on new reservation. See, all of this is quite straightforward, and we'll include the logo. Oh, sorry, I pressed the wrong button there. It shouldn't be logo, it should be insert image, and then put that there. And now we need to start looking at putting in the check-in date and the check-out date. So I'm going to put a text box here, not a label this time, but a text box, and this will be for my check-in date. A bit big there, never mind. A bit smaller. Now the question does use the word date, so we'll put that in there as well. And we'll have another one for the checkout date. And then we need a drop down box for visitor. So our drop down boxes are up here, and if we just scroll down we'll be able to find them. There's the drop down box, and I'm going to create my drop down box of visitors, and we go through a wizard. I want the combo box, the drop down box that is, to get the values from another table or query. Yes, we do. We want it to get it from the visitor table. So we'll select visitor, and then we look at the data that we're going to need in that drop down box, and it says a visitor will be selected from a list. We need to have enough information that would tell us that it is definitely that visitor. So I think the visitor ID will be useful, the forename, surname, and perhaps their postcode might help as well. We don't need any order to it. We can put them in an order if we want to. If you want to put them in order of surname, that's fine. We'll hide the key column. We don't need to see the visitor ID showing, but we do need a visitor ID because that's what we will store eventually. And we'll call this select visitor. Click on finish, and that's done. Then we need to look at a drop down box of a room. Well, with the room, we probably need to include on there at least the room type, because if we're thinking about what data is going to go in there, we'd want the room number, but also wanting to know what that room type is. So we need a query that will include the room type in here. So before we continue, we're just going to create a quick query with room on it and room type. I'm just going to put all the fields from room and all the fields from room type, and we will save this as query room with type. Now what this means now is that I can create my next combo box based on that query. Now it's not as complicated as this in the real coursework. We want to look up the values from another table or query. So I'll select queries this time, query room with type. Now remember, this isn't going to answer the question of only available rooms. So for those of you who are going on to complete this later, you might either be recreating this combo box or you'll need to adapt it. Or if you know you're going to be able to do that, you can just leave this till later. But this is to get us this mark and guarantee us this mark so far. So what do I need in there? Well, we certainly need the room ID because that's what will be linked and what will be stored. The room number, and we ought to have a description of that type of room. Let's put it in order of the room number. That makes sense. We can't hide the key column in this query. That doesn't matter. We can just leave the ID showing. And we need to make sure that we store it's a room ID that is going to be stored later on, and we'll call this select room. There we go. That's our drop down box. We then need to think about our house style. So remember about changing all of these. So that's going to be red, bold, I think it was 20, Times New Roman. All of these will need to be black, so make sure you change them to black, including the titles. Again, 12 Times New Roman. And of course we need to change the background colour, which is under Format, and when we go to Shape Fill and More Colours, Custom, and then you can choose the colour codes that go here. I can't remember exactly what they were, so I'm just going to leave it as white for now, but you would put the colour codes in from the actual question. And so finally we just need to do this button. That's the last thing that's going to appear on our printout, and it's going to link to this make reservation. Well, later on you'll need a macro to do that, so let's just create a blank macro. So I'm going to create as make reservation, close that down, and now I can create a button that will link to it. So go back to my design ribbon, so the button that will link. So we'll have miscellaneous, run macro, make reservation, and I need to put some text on it, make reservation. Finish. There it is. And of course we just need to change that to be our Times New Roman again, 12 points and black. You can see it goes a bit darker when it's black. And if we have a look at that, apart from the background colour and apart from this little bit of a misalignment here, that is what you will screenshot for part 1. In part 2 we'll have a look at validation, and in part 3 we'll look at getting this whole thing to actually work.